So I'm with Jennifer Hartwell. Jennifer is, should I call you Jennifer or Jenny? Or I always used to get that wrong.
Jenny, Jennifer, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so Jennifer used to work with me at Mercyhurst University. She was a student, and she has since graduated, and she is living in China. Jenny, thanks for being on my show. Tell me about where you're living in China and how you're doing.
I live in Yangzhou, which is a city about an hour and a half east of Shanghai. And it's 6.5 hour drive from Wuhan. But I'm good. I am an English teacher. I teach ages 3 to 10, currently teaching online. So yeah.
Awesome. So how long
hmm
have how long have you been over there?
6.5 months. I got here September 3rd. So
Okay, so before we get into the craziness, what do you love about it over there? What is life like over there pre-coronavirus?
I love China. I love the culture. One thing I really love about China is the community-based culture. So what's interesting is you can have a street of like 10 of this exact same noodle restaurants split up by 10 of the exact same hair salons, but they all manage to stay afloat because instead of competing with each other, they kind of help each other. So that's one thing that I really like. And I love how when you go to eat somewhere, you kind of just like point to something on the menu and pay and eat and go. And no one comes back up to your table and asks like, can I get anything for you? Do you want more water? Like they just kind of like leave you alone and you do your own thing. Um, what else do I really, oh, the driving is crazy in China. It's so funny. Because we have e-bikes, which is awesome. I wish that the US had e-bikes, but so like there's the cars and then there's the bike lane, and that just splits up traffic so easily, but you just have like cars and e-bikes like coming all over the place. And there's like a driving rule that you're not concerned with anything behind you but only what's in front of you, and so people will just like cut you off and you kind of have to like be aware of that. It's like driving on Mario Kart. It's so crazy.
It sounds pretty intense.
It's fun.
So why did you tell us how you got to China? Not physically, but like you just had graduated from Mercyhurst University in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you kind of took a different path to a totally different part of the world. How did you get there?
So someone who also went to Mercyhurst, who lives in China, came to Mercyhurst to recruit graduates, and then so I really liked what he had to say, and so I interviewed and accepted the offer, and then I had to get my TEFL certification, which is teaching English as a foreign language, online, and then I had to get like a background check. I had to have I had to have my college diploma, the TEFL, a couple other documents, and then I had to send that all into the school for them to then get me a work notice. Then I had to send that in, get my work visa, and then it was so crazy though because I didn't know when that whole process was going to end. And then once it did, and I had my visa and I informed the school, the next day they called me, and it was like a Saturday, and they said, can you come on Monday? And so I just booked my flight. 2 days later, I left.
Wow. So pretty quick turnaround there. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So throwing yourself into a totally different culture, what were the biggest adjustments for you?
Um, Probably. Oh, okay. One thing I did not expect. I didn't know that there's no lines. Like people just kind of hoard and will cut you off, and if it's their turn to go, they'll go. So at first, when someone had like cut me off, I felt really uncomfortable about it. But what's crazy is now I just feel like that makes so much more sense than things go by so much quicker when you just go up, you do your thing, and you leave rather than like waiting in a line. I don't know how to explain it.
Sure.
That took a lot of adjusting. But I don't know, like I thought language barrier would be an issue, but most people here just use Google Translate, or if I try speaking Chinese to them, they're really good about wanting to speak Chinese to me and work with me. And anyone who is probably under the age of 30, maybe 25, knows a little bit of English. So that helps a lot too. But yeah.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to China, you're adjusting to the culture, you're adjusting to your new job, your new role, working with kids, teaching them English.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of fast forward 3.5, 4 months in. When was the first time the word coronavirus even meant anything to you?
So January 20th, we had our Spring Festival dinner. Spring Festival is the Chinese New Year. It's a huge deal in China. And so my school put on this big event, and they had all these crazy shows and this big dinner, and it was so fun. And like the next day, I had heard of like this virus that is in China, and I mean, I heard that it was serious, but it was hard to take it seriously when you didn't really know the extent of it, and not every case is being reported. And so, yeah, I didn't really understand the seriousness of it. But 2 days later, I left to go to Thailand. And it was when I was in Thailand, like the day I arrived, my friend was like, oh, we're currently on government quarantine because someone who had been in Hubei province stayed with us and is in the hospital with bacterial pneumonia. And when my friend was like, oh, I'm in quarantine because of that, that's when I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Wow. Okay, so someone you knew was being quarantined for pneumonia. Um,
Mm-hmm.
did you ever have to either consider or think about being quarantined yourself? Like, did you think, oh man, is this something I could have caught?
Maybe not really, because so at that time I didn't think that there were any cases in my city. But when I was in Thailand, I was there for 9 or 10 days, and seeing the growing number of cases in my province, um, and then my school notified us and they said, we're not going to be back, like public schools are closed until February 17th. And so that's when I was like, I don't want to go back to China yet. I do want to stay away from that. And so I went to Korea, and then I went to Taiwan. But I had to come back because I had a cat and I did miss my apartment and stuff like that. But I was a little nervous about coming back because my dad was texting me everything he was seeing on the news, and he was like, don't go back to China. President Trump issued this and all of this and that. And what he was telling me was different than what I was reading, and it was very confusing. I was really conflicted. I was reaching out to people I worked with who were in China, and I was like, what's actually going on? What's the seriousness of where we live? And so that was enough for me to come back. I'm lucky that my school gave us a daily living stipend. So that was another motive to come back for me, was there's no way I could live in America off that stipend. So I kind of had to come back to China. But when I came back, I saw firsthand the craziness of all of the virus. So like when I came back, there were multiple roadblocks on the highway. So what normally would be a 2-hour drive was a 5-hour drive back from the airport. And there were temperature checks. They checked my passport. I had to get a QR code to get back into my city, but the QR code didn't work. And so they made us like go off on the side of the highway, and my phone was going to die. I didn't have service, didn't have anyone to call. I didn't know how long I was going to be stuck on the side of the highway. No one spoke any English. That was really scary. And like the cars were backed up for at least half a mile, and people were getting out of their cars and yelling, and just pure chaos. And that was another moment where I was kind of like, oh, like, how serious is this? And people wearing hazmat suits and masks, and it was crazy. But yeah, eventually they let me through. And then I was told that I have to be quarantined for 14 days. I cannot leave my apartment for any reason unless I need to go to the hospital. And so, yeah, I had to stay in my apartment, couldn't leave for 14 days. I had this like pass to get me into my apartment complex. And so when I was out of quarantine, I could only leave once every 2 days. But even then, like, I tried to avoid doing that unless I absolutely needed to leave.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you weren't actually in, and maybe I missed when you said this, but you weren't actually in China when the news really first broke about this outbreak. Where were you?
When the news first broke, I was in China, but like 2 days later, I left for Thailand.
Okay, so you were in Thailand and then you had to make your way back to China with probably the worst time ever to be trying to get back into to where you lived. But you said you had
Mm-hmm.
and you want to get back to home is where your heart is, and you want to be safe, right? You want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay,
Yeah.
so now coronavirus is officially a thing, and you are living in the country where it basically originated. Um, when did it really start to, you kind of started to talk about this, but when did it really start to like affect your day-to-day life to where you were like, man, this really sucks?
So when I got back, all these businesses were closed. Like, it made me so sad to see streets that were once so busy and so packed. And China's really known for their street markets and their food stands and all of that stuff. And so to see all of that just completely gone and like just things just closed and shut down, the only things open were grocery stores, hospitals, and KFC and Burger King. And even then, like, I had to, if I wanted Burger King or something, I would have to scan a QR code outside. They'd bring the food out to me, and then I'd have to leave. Like, I couldn't eat inside. So just to not have my normal routine of things, to not be able to go to my favorite restaurants. The malls were shut down. I couldn't even just like go walk around the mall. To be told that I can't go visit my friends. I can't go to their apartment complexes. I'm limited to only mine. People wearing masks everywhere they go. It was just eerie and sad and dark. Oh, yeah.
So what precautions, like obviously we're kind of heading into the worst of it, I feel like, over here in the United States. And
Mm-hmm.
we've heard the hand washing. I've sang the hand washing song. I mean, I've heard all these precautions we should be taking. Were you hearing about any of these precautions, and are they similar to the ones we're taking? What were some of the stuff they were telling you to do to avoid contracting it?
Mm-hmm. They told us not to hang out with anyone really. But if you are going to hang out with people, like, keep your circle to like no more than 5 people. And really it should be immediate family or people that you live with. Again, we could only leave once every 2 days. Wearing masks, washing your hands as frequently as possible, avoiding contact with animals, alive or dead. I stopped eating meat and dairy because of it, because I got really nervous. I didn't know what would happen with that. I'm trying to think of any other major precautions they told us. I mean, those were the big ones. And what's interesting to see here versus America is, so in China, they tell you to stay quarantined and to stay indoors. And if you leave, like, they'll just deny you and tell you to go back inside. But I feel like in America, when that happens, it's a bit more serious. The consequences of breaking that is a bit more serious, which was really interesting to me. And then also, like, in China, I feel like everyone was pretty, like, they were scared, but they were pretty calm. So no one would go to the grocery store and take all the toilet paper and the hand sanitizer that was left, but rather gather what they would need for a couple weeks and then just avoid going out as much as possible, and then go and get what they need when they absolutely needed it. And that was awesome, because when I needed to go to the grocery store to get something, the shelves were stocked. workers were continuously stocking the shelves. And then to see in America it all wiped out, and then what do you do for the next few weeks for them to restock it again? I've seen videos of people hoarding around toilet paper at Walmart and things like that. You would never see that here. It was so weird to me.
Wow. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that kind of speaks poorly to our culture over here. It's like, yeah, I agree with you. I was just talking to someone today about how our true colors during these times of starting to show, because you're right. Like, we're all running out, worried about our own benefit and our own resources. And we're forgetting, like, if we take all this, what's left for other people? And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I've even seen people, I don't know anybody personally, but I have heard and seen stories about people who are like leveraging this, like stockpiling toilet paper and hand sanitizer and then trying to sell it. Like, that's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it shines a poor light on our country right now. And we're not even really in the worst of it yet.
Yeah. I think that the most important thing is for everyone to just stay inside, and please, like, listen when they say stay inside. Wash your hands, wear a mask. Like, don't go off and use this as a little vacation. Like, I, especially since viruses like these grow in like an exponential growth, and if the only way that this virus can latch onto people is if it has people to latch onto. So if you all stay indoors, it's not going to have anyone to latch onto, and it'll disperse and go away. So it's really important to stay quarantined and stop bulking up. I mean, I feel like Americans have just seen too many movies and TV shows about this stuff, and they don't have those types of movies in China. So I feel like that might have something to do with it too.
Yeah, you're right. We've all seen way too many like apocalyptic zombie movies. So we're all out like stocking up on everything. Yeah, it's been crazy. And like I said, I don't even think we're in the worst of it. So that's why I kind of wanted to get your perspective. Um,
Mm-hmm.
did you ever have a moment where you thought, like, oh, my throat is scratchy, I feel feverish? Like, did you ever think for a second I might have it?
Not that I might have it, but rather like if I had a sore throat or if I was sneezing a lot, I was really nervous, and it's something that I was more in tune with than I normally would be. Well, another thing too is I had to report my temperature daily to my school, because in order for our school to open back up, they have to report all of this to the government. So I was checking my temperature daily, which was super helpful. And I think that's another thing you can do to kind of ease your mind about the whole situation. So when I had a sore throat, I would check my temperature and be like, okay, I'm fine. Like it's nothing. And I did reach out to my school and I said, if I were to think I had it or contract the virus, what would happen? What kind of care would I go through? How would you help me? What would you do to provide for me? So that was another precaution that I personally took that eased my mind about the situation.
Gotcha. So talking about your school briefly, how do you stay connected with your students and your peers? Like, this quarantine life kind of sucks. How did you or
Mm-hmm.
how do you stay connected with people besides just doing things like this over Skype or anything? Like, how do you, especially kids, like you work with a lot of these kids every day, what do you
Mm-hmm.
do now?
I mean, and we communicate through WeChat, and the teaching program that we're using is called Classin. Um, but you're very limited to the things that you can do, and it's sad because I just see them on a tiny screen. And I make sure to show up to my class early and say hello to each student and drag them onto the screen so that their picture's bigger and my picture's bigger. Um, but in the games are very limited, the interactions are very limited, especially since the school that I work at, when I was teaching in person, the way that we taught was very game-based learning. And so I was always playing with these children, and it was so much fun. And then now to just only communicate through a screen, it's very heartbreaking. But I mean, you do what you can, I guess. But yeah, our main source of communication is through WeChat and through Classin.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, now, like, where are you at now, like, with the virus? I have heard obviously that it started to subside a little bit over there. Are you still in quarantine? What does your day-to-day life look like right now?
Um, no one's in quarantine unless that they've traveled outside of China within the last 14 days. And as of last Monday, things have, so some businesses have opened again, malls have opened again, but now everywhere I go, I have to register, I have to scan a QR code and register where I'm going so that if I get the virus, they know everywhere that I went. And if there was an outbreak, let's say at the local grocery store, they can see everyone who was at that grocery store. Um, and some restaurants let you eat inside, but they have to pay an extra fee for letting people eat inside their restaurant. Um, I definitely try to stay indoors as much as I can, but I don't think that if I did start to go out more and have larger social gatherings that I would be risking too much just because, again, I think we already went through that first initial heavy wave of cases. And also my province wasn't didn't have a huge number of cases, but my city has closed its borders. So everyone that's in Yangzhou right now has been here. Um, I know that there are some teachers that recently came back and they're quarantined in a hotel specifically for people who have recently traveled. Um, but yeah, day to day, it's just, I don't know, staying inside as much as I can, scanning that code. Yeah, it's very weird.
It is weird. Yeah. And we've only been like, we just got an official in Erie County here in Pennsylvania. We just got an official stay at home advisory. Like, we're not supposed to leave unless going to the grocery store or going to a doctor. Or if we do
Mhm.
work somewhere that's life essential, we obviously have permission to leave for work. But we've only been at it for a week and it already feels incredibly uncomfortable and unnatural and somewhat frustrating. How long has this been the normal for you?
Mm, I got back February 9th, so it's almost been 2 months for me. You get used to it, unfortunately. It sounds so like sad, but yeah.
Wow.
Another thing too is when I go out, I get so before all of this, I would get stared at a lot because I'm a foreigner in a smaller city. Um, but it was more out of like curiosity, and people would look at me like, "Do you speak Chinese? I want to talk to you." But now when I get stared at, it's people um, who think I have the virus. Basically, they think that I was in America recently, and that I'm going to bring the virus back to China. And so now that people will physically back away from me if they see me, or they'll give me a scared kind of look, and I don't blame them. Like, they're simply just scared. They're not being racist. They don't know where I've been or who I am or how long I've been here. So that's one of the things that's kind of sad to me.
Yeah, that would be wow, that would be like super sad because you already kind of feel a little bit out of place and now you are also looked at as threatening. You're like the least threatening
Hmm.
person I know. All right, well, we
Yeah.
talked about all the sad stuff. Tell me something that throughout this you've learned. I don't know, like something maybe you've learned about yourself, about the Chinese culture, about our world. Like, we're all going to come out of
Hmm.
it hopefully okay and hopefully healthy. And trying to see
Hmm.
the silver lining here. What is something positive that you're going to take away from this whole experience, if anything?
Um, Using the quarantine to find hobbies or get back into things that I didn't have the time to do before I was quarantined. So I've been cooking a lot. I've improved my cooking skills. I've been working out a lot from home. I found fun little like Pilates videos. Um, and just seeing people come together in ways that, like, here's all the fun things that I've done in quarantine, or here's how I've kept my mind active. I've gotten to read books I haven't read in a long time for leisure, because being an English major, it was kind of like, you have to read this book. So now I can read for pleasure. I got back into creative writing again. So I've taken this time to learn new things and get better at hobbies I enjoyed. And yeah, it's been okay.
Yeah,
Watch movies and shows I need to catch up on. That was a big thing too.
yeah, lots of binge watching of things. What's the best thing you've watched lately?
I started a new show called Castle Rock. That was pretty
Ah,
good.
oh, that's a good one
Mhm.
on Hulu, right? I think that one's on Hulu.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
Mhm.
lots of lots of Netflix, Hulu. I have a 3-year-old, so we are. I think we've watched Frozen 2 at least 6 times this week. So yeah, we're definitely in the trenches of binge watching television. But yeah, it's been weird because here, just even in my little city of Erie, Pennsylvania, I've actually seen like I'm trying to see the silver lining too, and I've seen people outside. I've talked to people I haven't ever really talked to because let's face it, when you go to work every day, you come home, you crash, you're like, I just want to relax. But now you're home all day, so you're like, I'm gonna go outside and I'm gonna talk to people and I'm gonna go for a walk. So here it's been like that's something positive for me is that I don't want people to get sick, obviously, but it's been great to see people outside and it's like the perfect time of year and
Yeah.
spring is kind of starting to show up, so that has been really the only positive so far that I've seen through all this. But yeah, I mean, when
Mhm.
you're stuck inside, there's only so much you can do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think then, to kind of wrap things up here, what do you think the future looks like for you? Like, are you seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think, like, not that you have to say a date or a time, but are you being optimistic, and what do you think is ahead for you in the coming weeks or months?
I'm trying to remain optimistic. All I keep thinking about is when I get back to work, how like much work I'm gonna have to do, or like how behind my students are gonna be. I keep thinking about that. But what I'm really looking forward to is being able to travel again when borders open back up. So that's kind of like what's getting me excited is planning trips, planning where I'm gonna go next. Um, I'm thinking we're going to start back work again in like mid-April, maybe early May. So I'm really excited to see my kids again. That's something that I'm looking forward to. But again, now that things are starting to pick back up again, yeah, I'm remaining really hopeful and I'm looking forward to that.
I'm sure you are. And one last question, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but for your friends like me who are like, so what's this going to be like? What advice are you
Mm-hmm.
offering? How are you encouraging people that think like the worst is ahead for the United States? Like, what kind of advice and encouragement are you offering people like me that are like, hey, what can I expect with all this?
Well, in China, it was about 2 months that we had to really be strict about all of the things that the government is advising us to do. And so I think what's important is to know that if you listen to, all of the precautions that are necessary, don't touch your face, wash your hands, stay inside, blah blah blah, that we can get through this a lot quicker. And I mean, just remaining hopeful and looking at the positives, like I said, looking at all of the things that you can do or catch up on while you're in quarantine. Keep your mind active, and yeah, that would be the biggest thing I'd say.
Awesome. And what do you miss most about United States?
Mexican food.
Nice.
Yeah. It's funny because you know how in the States, we have like Americanized cultural food. So like Americanized Chinese food, Americanized Mexican food, blah blah blah. Well, in China, they have their Chinese version of Western food. So they have their Chinese pizza or their Chinese Italian. And it's not very good, but they don't have their Chinese version of Mexican food. And so I really miss just like a taco or burrito. I can't find that here.
And what's the best thing you've cooked up? You said you've been practicing cooking. What's the best thing
Mhm.
you've cooked up lately?
I made this like vegan chili and it was really good. And the stuffed peppers I made were really good. So, lots of like stews and soups and all that stuff. So it's fun.
So you get out to you're still able to get out to the grocery store, like how often? Like once a week, once every other week?
Um, Probably like once a week, which is interesting because I would go grocery shopping every single day. That's like a common practice in China. People go grocery shopping every day or every other day. So yeah, now I probably go like once a week.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share, for the hundreds of people, maybe thousands that are going to listen to this podcast because of your, just your perspective on all this? Is there anything else that we can chat about before we wind down here?
Um, I guess just like stop pointing fingers or like making insensitive jokes about the whole thing. People are going to be like, "Oh, China, it's China's fault," and China's going to be like, "Oh, it's America's fault," and everyone's going to want to blame everybody and be racist and make insensitive jokes. And I understand trying to like make a joke of a lighthearted situation, but there is certainly a line there. And I think that when you do things like that, you're just making a negative situation 10 times worse. And so by looking at this as a way of coming together and getting through this together, we're all going through the same thing. Just really remain hopeful and positive. That's one thing that I think will help fight this quicker and better and sooner.
I couldn't agree with you more. You're right. This is one of the probably, hopefully, one of the only times in our lifetime that we ever actually all can really relate to one single event or circumstance where if I ever meet someone from another country, I can say, hey, do you remember that time that we literally were all affected by that one thing? I hope it's the only
Mm-hmm.
time, but you're right. We can
Mm-hmm.
either, we can grow from it or we can grumble over it. And you're right. I think it's trying to have a positive attitude about it all and sympathy and empathy for the people like that you're living around every day that are going through it. The last thing we need, like you said, is to be pointing fingers or being insensitive about it. Man,
Mm-hmm.
that is a good word, Jen. Hey, um, if anybody has any questions or they're like, oh man, Jen had some really good points, is there any way they can connect with you? Like, I know you're super limited to how accessible you are, but I know you've always
Mm-hmm.
got good stuff on the gram, email, anything like that, like any ways, or I can filter the messages to you somehow. Is there any way people could reach out to you possibly?
Yeah, they could reach out to me through my Instagram DMs because I'm not private on Instagram, and I check that when I can. When I can connect to my VPN, or they can always email me. My email is jhart_3@qq.com.
Cool. I will include that in the notes for this episode. So if people have any questions, or maybe they just want to send you some encouragement and tell you to keep to hang in there and keep being encouraging, they can do that. Jen, thanks so much for your time.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're about 12 hours apart, so your day is about to begin, mine is about to end. But I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I never thought actually this would happen. I was like, this is a shot in the dark, but I wonder if I could talk to somebody in China about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. It's been fun.